I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Oconee County Planning Commission, 5 o'clock Monday, June the 20th. Our first order of business is invocation. Mr. Deach, sir.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we ask that you please watch over this committee and the planning staff and guide us to wise and safety-conscious decisions in support of the public. We also ask that you watch over the county law enforcement, first responders, and other county workers as they perform their duties, and hope that they may return safely home following their every shift to their families. We ask that you please watch over the county and state leaders as they work to make the county and state a better place to live each day. In his name we pray, amen.
Mr. Dolan, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Okay, our next item is the approval of minutes for the June 6th, 2022 meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Is there any corrections or spelling errors?
Who seconded?
Mr. Nix?
Thank you.
If I'm not mistaken, I wasn't here,
Yeah, you weren't here.
No, you wasn't here.
so I think we need to make that.
Oh, you were on the attendance.
This was the meeting I was at.
Yeah, absent needs to go over to Mike
I'm
Smith.
down on number 15 there, so.
See that, Vivian?
That's my fault.
Okay.
Good catch.
If there's nothing further, all those in favor say aye. Opposed?
So we are making those changes?
Yes.
Now y'all making the changes? Okay, public comment on agenda items. I don't have any signed up, but Mr. Perry Smith sent an email he would like to have read into the minutes. Mr. James, would you kindly read that for me, please?
Be happy to. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Planning Commissioners. I apologize for not making it today. I'd like to speak with you today about freedom. As many of you can see, our freedom is under attack at an alarming rate, especially nationally. Our freedom of speech, as well as our Second Amendment rights, are all under attack. Big companies and municipalities can take your land through eminent domain. This is against our rights as free Americans that are land owners. The more power you give these people, the more they will take and take more. Here's an example. Our government gave incentives for Americans to use and have solar panels. Many took advantage of these incentives without realizing they were only a temporary arrangement in trade for a removal of some of your freedoms. You thought you were going to be an energy-independent household. Nope. With this temporary agreement now removed by the government, now Blue Ridge Electric is going to charge a monthly fee of $78 to solar owners. We make the energy, sell it back for 5 cents, and yet we have to buy it for 11 cents. Now they additionally tack on another fee just for you having it. This is an example of how government dependency is created and a freedom now gone in the energy sector. An incentive the government wanted Americans to take advantage of just became a moot point through a new monthly fee. Why? Because they can and no one can stop them. The reason for this is to ask you to stop taking American freedoms from us. Land, codes, fees, and taxes are all growing in a time when the dollar is worth less, and now more zoning has been spoken about yet again. This is not about a few people, this is about all of us. The more of our freedom we allow someone to take, the easier it makes it to take more when they want, locally and nationally. Thank you for taking your time to serve all of the citizens of Oconee County, and that's Mr. Perry Smith.
Thank you very much, sir. Do you have any comments from the commission?
I do. I need to take a couple minutes and talk about a curb cut subcommittee update for you. We had a meeting on the 16th, but we canceled it, or I canceled it, and I had a work session with James. The two main components that we're going to address, that we're going to bring back to the Planning Commission, is how we can connect parking lots to reduce curb cuts. Now, we're talking about Highway 123. And we're also see how we can include the DOT early in the county approval process. Ben Olson told us that Greenville has been very successful with this, and they've also gone on to say that Spartanburg is adopting this process too. James is going to talk to us in a couple of minutes about how we can encourage connecting parking lots. Ben Olson gave us the names of the people to address a letter to when we develop some kind of a process of who to contact and what kind of process we're going to have for the DOT to get involved. At the next Planning and Economic Development meeting, I would like to have James give an update on our progress for the curb cut and auxiliary turn lane effort that we're going forward with. I've already talked to Paul Kane about that, and he's very much in favor of it, so it will be on the agenda at their next meeting. I hope to have a final proposal for the Planning Commission sometime in July. James and I will get together and we'll have another meeting. Tom will be there and whoever else is interested, and we'll flesh all of this out. James, do you have any input that you want to make at this time?
No, that sounds good. So we've talked about, I think we talked about this with Mr. Gollin last month. Basically, SCDOT, getting them engaged earlier on in the process so they can look at those potential subdivisions and how they can maximize efficiencies with curb cuts and either do shared access or look at mitigations that might be required.
Tom, you got anything you want to add?
No, not at this time.
Let me make one more comment. It really was good having been there, sitting across the table and just having a back and forth conversation. It really was productive. And there was a lot of free exchange of information on how to do things. And I thought it was very, very productive. David?
I just had some questions about the reach of this curb cuts. Is it just Highway 123?
This is what Paul
And
had
is
asked for.
it just commercial, or is it subdivisions and commercial?
It is the undeveloped areas on 123, just from Seneca down to the bridge, where Clemson, where it goes into
Okay.
Clemson.
So from the edge of Seneca outside the municipality?
Yeah, obviously outside municipality, and then on down just to the bridge. That's the area that he wanted addressed.
It's Jason.
This came from the Planning Economic Development, a meeting back in, actually a year ago. And we've been slugging it out since then. Anyway, I'd like to make a real quick motion here. I move that James give a progress report on the curb cut aux turn lane effort to the PED committee at their next meeting.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. It's open for discussion. I have one question. Do we not go to committees and stuff after we have something in hand to show them rather than just going and telling them things that we've talked about beforehand?
What I want to do is, I'm hoping that James and I and Tom and whoever else is interested, we can get together with the subcommittee and flesh this thing out and then bring it forward to the Planning Commission for them to go ahead and look at in depth. And then hopefully we'll have something to take to the Planning and Economic Development meeting as kind of a final draft of something. However, if we don't, for some reason or other, able to get something to the Planning Commission anyway, I would just like to give an update to them that a subcommittee has been working on it, and this is the areas that we are at right now. It hasn't gone to the full Planning Commission yet for their approval. I want to let them know that we're working on something and we're moving forward, because they're the ones that asked for this. And it's been a year, and we have still been fooling around with this thing for various reasons.
Sounds reasonable to me. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Unanimous.
Okay. Anyone else? Johnson? No? Okay, let's move on down to staff comment.
Yep, just a couple of housekeeping things first. This Wednesday, 22nd, 9 a.m. in this room, the ACOG training for y'all will be going on. It is gonna be y'all, the BZA, and then we have some outside guests from other commissions coming as well, so we'll have a bunch of people here. Make sure you get here. Hopefully we'll get it through and get everybody back in good standing. We do have someone to introduce to you guys tonight. So Ms. Elise Dunway has joined us in our office and is our new planning assistant tech and helping. So we're thrilled to have her and say hello after the meeting. And then the last piece I have for you guys tonight is just a little bit of a continuation on the improved residential parcels. So we did go back through and look at the value of each of those. That is the value from last year, so that's a 2020 number. So that was a little easier to get than the reassessment numbers, which are going to be starting soon. But basically, those legal residences that made up 57.8% of the total improved parcels had a value of 184 million, almost 185, and makes up almost 60% of the total value of all of those improved residential parcels. So, go ahead, sorry.
So this is showing the value of the property, not the assessment calculation. In other words, the revenues brought in.
Right.
Okay. We would have to extrapolate that by taking the non-legal resident and multiplying it by a 6%
No, so
formula
that's,
plus the millage.
yeah, so there would be,
Because looking at this, it looks like that the non-legal resident is going to be significantly higher tax generation than legal resident. Is that a correct statement?
probably not, but that's just the value of the actual improved parcel, so that's like a market value. And that
Right,
means
but
it's
if,
millage.
because we're non-legal resident is secondary property owner, is that correct?
Non-primary resident.
Non-primary resident.
It could be investment property, it could be.
Since they pay 3 times more in taxes than the primary resident, of 59 to 40, 3 times more would probably be a higher tax income from that group. Is there the ability to add that category of what revenue we're seeing actually come in from? Because to me, that's the importance of this exercise, is to see where we're generating tax revenue.
Yeah.
And I may be wrong.
What do you mean they pay 3 times more tax? They pay your legal, I mean, you live here, you pay normally 4%. If it's a second home, you only pay 6%.
No, that's not exactly right. So if you, as a primary resident, you pay a 4% calculation, but you also pay a millage of like 0.124 or something. But if it's your secondary resident, you're paying at 6%, but you're paying a millage of like 0.273. So if it's your primary resident, for every $100,000 of value, you're paying about 480 to 515 bucks. If it's your secondary resident, for every $100,000 of value, you're paying $1,300. So 500 versus $1,300, you're paying 3 times more as a non-resident, as your non-primary. To me, that's a huge calculation that's missing here to say, hey, where's our money coming from?
It's coming from them. And Duke Energy.
Yeah, we can keep going on this.
Thank you. Were you going to say anything, was that it on staff, or were you going to say anything?
The other as well.
Okay.
So, anybody have any other questions about this or comments, and then we'll move on to the last? The final thing for you guys tonight is the right-of-way letter, to the Transportation Committee. It's gonna be rerouted. I've talked to Mike already this evening. We will draft a letter to the Roads and Bridges Department, have a staff opinion on that, and then get that onto the Transportation Committee agenda. So I don't think we're gonna miss the meeting at all, but it's been asked to go, kind of in a different route.
I would like to make a comment on that. I don't think that staff I don't think staff gets to say what county council or any department within county council, what direction they have to take without them being also notified. In other words, I don't think that we should stay on the Transportation Committee's agenda. Even if staff over here wants to make a recommendation to Transportation Committee, that's fine, but I don't think that the staff gets to say whether our letter goes to Transportation or not. In other words, if it goes to them first and they shut this down and it never gets to Transportation because they say they don't agree with it, that's not okay. If they want to go down that road, that's fine in making recommendations, but we had a unanimous 6-0 decision to send this to Transportation, and I think it's within our right to send it directly to Transportation without staff. Again, if they want to give input, fine, but I don't think that they get to be a stopgap.
I agree.
I agree.
So just want it on the record.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think staff should be able to make their input.
Absolutely. I'm not saying that I'm not minimizing staff's importance by any means, but I am saying that staff is not the gatekeeper of our
Yeah, what you're
information going to somebody else,
I got that.
or shouldn't be. So I'd like to stay on the Transportation Committee agenda.
We make a motion to that effect to stay on that agenda, or
Dan?
I think we probably should.
I do too.
Just so that it's known that I would like to make a motion that James, that while Planning Commission has acknowledged staff's comment about going to staff, that we are sending this directly to the Transportation Committee. If staff wants to send their own recommendations, they can as well.
I'll second that. Discussion?
I got some discussion after this vote.
All right, if there's no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Dave?
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in on
I would
staff.
actually like to see the staff's feedback on that position as well. Opportunity to look at that, at their opinion. That way we can see if we're missing something.
Before it goes, before we send something?
No, not necessarily.
No.
No, just, I just want to see it.
When
Put it
available.
in the backup material somewhere.
Yeah, that's all.
We need a motion for that one?
I don't think it's required, but you're welcome to make one if you like.
Direct staff to give us that information when it's available.
Somebody hanging through the ceiling over there.
Yeah, I think he's working on the air conditioning.
It's a good project.
Anything further, James?
That's it.
Okay. Our next item is commercial junkyards. We have no, comments, public comment for that. I would like to state before we start our discussion that just everyone remember this is strictly for commercial junkyards, a business, not for individual properties with junk in their yard. It's strictly a commercial business, for commercial businesses. With that said, I'm gonna open up the floor for discussion. Mike?
I've given this some careful thought at 3 o'clock in the morning. And what I want to do is make a motion here. I move that the Planning Commission create an outline of the junkyard ordinance major parts before discussing the specific text of an element of the ordinance. These might be, but not limited to, screening, fencing, drainage, definitions, enforcement, and finally grandfathering.
Second.
Let me explain what I'm trying to do here. I'm afraid we're going to get down into the minutia too quickly and start worrying about the text. Let's just look at a broad brush topics that we want to talk about, and then gradually create an outline, and then we can start taking, and let's say, I don't care if it's fencing. Let's get 2 or 3 inputs from different counties as to fencing, and then see which one is going to apply to what we may need. James, do you have any kind of input? If you were creating an ordinance from zero, how would you go about it?
I would find one I like a lot and then go line by line through it and decide what you wanted to keep and what you didn't want to keep.
Should we or should we not come up with a definition or something? What is a junkyard? We have no definition of this. How can we decide we want fences, trees, or setbacks or anything else if we don't even know, we haven't defined what an actual junkyard is? That might be the first thing we do, and then, and I agree with you, go into these other items after that. Dave?
Okay, I'm going to agree with Mr. Smith on the approach, and also you, Mr. Chairman. The categories I wrote down when I read through each of these benchmark junkyard ordinances from other counties and locations was, what's the definition of a junkyard? Backfits of existing junkyards. Distances from roads or offsets. Distances from other items like childcare, churches, etc. Fencing, buffering and greenery, and runoff controls. So I think if we, and I agree, we need to look at the definition of a junkyard first. We need to nail that down, and there's a good example in here. But I think Mr. Smith has the appropriate approach, in my opinion. And I think we should go from there.
Let me add something here. We can definitely keep going in the way that I had mentioned here in this motion, and we can take the very first one, definitions, and we can focus on that. And then we can keep going and, a broad spectrum approach on the other items that we think, but not limited to what I mentioned here, that we think we want to include. So I think at 3 o'clock in the morning, this is a brilliant motion.
Anyone got anything else? All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so, Mr. Smith?
Back to you, Frankie, you're the chairman for definition. You've got one, I'm sure.
Well,
David has one too.
David got one. I've looked at the Pickens County definition. I personally think it needs to be tweaked, but it's not a bad definition of a junkyard. But, Mr. Nix, what do you have?
Page, well, I don't know what number it is, Anderson County. Look at the junkyard definition. Means any land or area used in whole or in part for commercial storage and/or sale of waste paper, rags, scrap metal, or other junk, and including storage of vehicles and machinery and/or dismounting of such vehicles or machinery for commercial. I mean, that's for commercial storage. I believe the way I read that, it excludes everything except commercial. Would mean a business specifically, some entity specifically in that business. What do y'all think about that one?
I think it's brilliant, but I'm trying to figure out where you are in your notes.
Well, there's no page numbers, but if you go back about 5 pages, 6 pages.
Yeah, it's about 4 to 5 pages from
And
the
the
end.
green box would say Anderson County in it.
I've got a highlight on your screen, so.
I see
The only
it.
thing,
I guess my question is, could that be, I'm not a lawyer, so could that be extended to people with, regular people that want to just remodel a car and they've got 2 or 3 different old cars in their yard? I don't think this applies to them.
not when it says commercial storage, but my only problem with it, or not with it, but my concern is, would this bleed over into the towing facilities that have basically storage, they're storing cars until the insurance can do their thing? Would this bleed over into that? And that's something we don't need to bleed into. We need to leave
Wait a minute,
it.
say that again? I'm
See,
sorry.
your towing companies, they'll go get a wrecked car.
Okay,
and
so I
leave
got
it.
an answer to that.
Okay.
I got an answer to that. So if you flip to the next page, under Buncombe County, there's 2 sentences up there at the top. The second sentence is, this definition does not include motor vehicles, impoundment, lot, or tow yard.
That's a good one to add.
So if we put the first piece from Anderson County and then this statement behind it, I think we've got something we can work with.
I like that.
Because I wanted to make sure, or at least I did, I wanted to make sure we left the towing companies out of it because, they're not a junkyard.
See, I don't like the first sentence in the Buncombe County definition because that would apply to non-commercial people.
Correct.
So throw that one out.
I'm just trying to think this through. When it says that scrap metal, a commercial scrap metal, say recycler, is considered a junkyard under this definition then. Just want to make sure that's okay.
Example of scrapyard type stuff is the business that is behind, Upstate Towing there on, what's the name of that road? It's right off 123, but what's the name of that side road? Anyway, they're right behind that business and they're a scrapyard. They're a junkyard. That's just junk cars, junk scrap, cans, whatever it's a salvage yard, I guess you'd say. So that would, to me, that would be considered a junkyard, even though they probably don't sell parts. I don't know that they do or don't, I haven't been by there, but, they should fall under the same rules as the one for just, for cars and things that sell parts off of. Because they're just they can be just as unsafe as that.
I think maybe we ought to add something to that list. We got back to the Anderson definition. Parts need to be added. And some definitions, for some reason, includes rope. You got rags and scrap metal, but rope, and, you could put parts in there if you wanted to, because I think that's a lot of times what we consider selling parts.
Okay,
You're
so
saying you add the word parts and waste paper, rags, scrap metal, parts, or other junk.
Yeah, and rope, because I've just seen rope, and I don't know exactly why, but I've seen rope added to these lists of things that.
I guess my question is, what is other junk? That's the only thing I had a question on.
Yeah, that's a subjective thing.
I would strike that
Commercial
out
part
and put,
is the good part.
parts of cars or parts,
The
something.
way this sentence is, it's for commercial storage and/or sale of, so that's why I say sale of parts, sale of whatever it is.
Car part or
That second part of that sentence is not defining commercial storage.
So you're saying the and/or kind of changes the essence of the commercial part of it? So,
Yeah, I mean, to me, it should be, very well written so that there's no,
part for commercial
Exception.
storage.
Frankie, Mr.
So-
Smith has his hand up.
Oh, yes, sir.
I'm not as fast as you guys. Do you think you could put it on the screen up there, type it in or whatever, so that we can look at the words? I'm having a little trouble following this. I mean, David's helping me, but I'm elderly, so I should have a certain compensation here, okay?
Can I make a statement?
Can you do that, James?
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
So I'm not an attorney, but the way I'm reading that sentence is slightly different than the way you're reading that sentence in
Okay.
that commercial is applicable through the whole deal. The and/or references storage and/or sale. So you're
That's-
storing it or you're selling it, but commercial is still commercial all the way through.
Correct.
Okay.
That's the way you read it.
Yeah, I see the way I think you're right. So back to my, friendly amendment if you wanted to. I still like the idea of putting ropes and parts in there and not be covered under other junk. Does anybody else feel strong enough to
I want
have an
to see
opinion on
some
that?
words.
Well, I don't know, they've got the commercial storage and/or sale, waste paper, rags, metal, or other junk, and including storage of vehicles. I just seemed like they were saying that twice.
James, you got any input?
I think it's just further defining it.
So I think you have additional definitions to come up with once you accept this. So vehicle is one of those words you're probably gonna have to define. Vehicle can be cars, boats, airplanes. You'll have to give a definition for several other things just based on this. That's the one that jumps out to me first is vehicle, just because it's a pretty broad word.
Would we not have to define other junk? Or,
So you leave yourself in a subjective place with other.
I would say strike that out, but that, I don't know if that is. Anybody object to Tom speaking?
I think we ought to add boats in there, but go ahead, yeah, let's.
Real quick. Just so you know, South Carolina law defines junkyards. It defines what junk is. It defines what a process scrapping system is. All of these things are defined in state law. So I feel like kind of going around the whole.
Every county has their own definition. Every single county, all 47 counties, has a definition of what a junkyard is.
Well,
And
just
whether the
trying to
state has it or
simplify
not.
things. I'm just saying they enumerate everything that they consider junk, and that's the state law. That's all. I'm not trying to get in the process.
No, that's,
I like the definition as written, and I think we just need to look at what South Carolina defines as junk. Is that section
I've got it here,
57?
if you want me
that
to
should
read
be
it
the
to
very
you.
first piece on
Yeah.
these.
It doesn't have the definition of junk, but
They're not, okay.
Yeah, it starts at 572740.
2720 is what I've got, and it talks about junk. Scrap old or scrap copper, brass, et cetera, batteries, paper, trash, rubber debris, waste, junk, dismantled, wrecked automobiles, trucks, et cetera, et cetera.
Does it say et cetera, or does it keep defining?
That's me.
Okay.
So it may have boats in there. I
It
wouldn't.
doesn't have boats in there, but we need to put boats in.
yeah, we need to put boats in that, I think.
I think I've got one that fits in that category. Kind of half up and half down.
In the water?
Some of it is, some of it isn't. Well, I think we got a starting point. Let's put it that way.
So we need to add the second part of the thing here for commercial storage and/or sale of waste paper, rags, scrap metal, boats. And what was you saying, Mr. Golden?
Road and
Road.
parks were the two things I mentioned.
We got rope in there.
Yeah?
I added it.
Thank you.
So here's that, chapter 57, or title
Yeah.
57.
That's what I was reading from.
Oh, okay.
Only thing I don't like about that, the storage of vehicles, that can throw the impound lots, the towing companies back in the mix.
You do have the sentence that Mr. Nix already gave you from Buncombe. That is
Okay,
that
yeah.
final sentence, that this definition does not include motor vehicle impoundment lots.
I've got a question,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. So once we all agree on something, how does the process work? Who writes this stuff down and creates this entity ordinance or draft ordinance?
The guy's right there.
Are we just discussing and they collect information?
And then they'll write it up
They
in
write
a
it and they bring it back to
ordinance
us.
thing and then bring it back to us for us to look over.
After that.
Well, then it goes to the attorney.
And then he'll bring it back to you.
You may not recognize it then.
But there will be a motion for us to accept some type of document at some level.
Once
This is a
everybody,
fairly involved process.
but this is, we have gotten further than any other commission in the last year and a half so far. So we're actually
The
doing
night's not
something.
over with yet, though.
So, is everybody in agreement with this definition as it stands so far?
I just want to make a statement on this whole process. I'm a big fan of property rights, as you guys probably know. So the less rules for me, the better. But I realize that if there's public health and safety involved in some aspects of this, then that's the reason I'm willing to cooperate and move forward.
So this document doesn't say boats in it. Are
Yeah,
we saying we're adding that?
yeah, we're gonna
That
add
term?
boats.
We need to add boats. Right
The
after-
state says automobiles and other vehicles, which I guess would be boats, but we're specifically adding the word boats in here.
I'll just put a comma after vehicle and put boats.
Or in parentheses, you could list.
Including boats? Or right there, vehicles, storage of vehicles, boats, machinery, and/or. Yep, that works perfect.
Now, I'm just thinking about a commercial boat dealer that's got lots of boats out there. Are we not covering them in this?
It says, after that,
And-
it says, and/or dismantling of such vehicles and machinery. So,
I just want to make sure we put boats in the right place as far as the sentence structure. Right now, we've got it after or other junk and including storage of vehicles.
Says the operational status, would that help you if we had inoperable vehicles, boats, and machinery?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
yeah,
that
that sounds a little
yeah,
better.
that may be going too far then.
Storage of inoperable.
And somebody's gonna say, oh, well, that car doesn't have a motor in it, but it's still operable because I can push it around or some kind of thing like that.
Chairman.
Sure.
Go ahead, sir.
Curiosity question. So as we've laid out this definition roughly, how many commercial entities in this county does this affect right now? Would it affect?
So that depends on what you guys decide about grandfather.
Zero is correct. So if we did grandfather people in, how many would it affect?
Currently 0. It would be only new.
No, I understand that. If we grandfathered the existing junkyards in over some period, which I'm not sure I'm in favor of, how many would it affect hypothetically?
I wouldn't be able to give you a good answer without some
We don't have
research.
business licenses.
Yeah.
This would only pertain to new businesses coming in the area, the ones that are already here, unless we put something in this ordinance.
Well, what I'm worried about is that somebody's gonna push for that, because if you look at these other benchmarked ordinances, most of them have a 12-month or some kind of grace period in which you have to come into compliance.
Let me try to address that. There may be, I mentioned 5 or 6 items here, parts of the junkyard ordinance. There may be one part in there that we want to say, okay, you've got 3 years to comply with this part of it. There may be other parts where we say we're going to grandfather the existing ones in. I won't get too far down into the text of it right now, because there may be, for instance, and I'm just throwing this out, let's talk about drainage. That may be an area where we say, okay, we get into the text of it and we say, we want you to comply with this within a certain period of time. But yet we may let the screening be grandfathered in with what we have. But something like drainage, which may be a health hazard, you may want to, the commission may want to ask them to comply or require them to comply within a certain period of time. Does that help?
Oh, yeah, it helps.
In a positive way? Well, let's not get into that here.
We haven't got to that part yet, we'll get to it later. Any other changes
So I
on,
think you kind of left one thought half finished on the storage of vehicles, boats, and machinery, and whether or not there's some other word that helps you there.
Out of service or inoperable,
Out of service, inoperable,
non-functional, whatever you want to put.
We could say after vehicles, see definition or something like that in parentheses. And then, as James suggested, then go into defining what a vehicle is, including airplanes, boats, automobiles, trucks, whatever.
I think putting the word inoperable does that actually.
That's subjective.
Yeah, that is subjective.
Just because it doesn't have a battery.
Right.
The other thing that's in the back of my mind is this whole idea of coming up with some kind of number as to how many vehicles, how many things are there. I think that was something Travis brought up to us. He was saying, you need to be thinking about numbers. You remember that?
excuse me,
Travis Nix, he was saying, what constitutes a junkyard could include how many numbers of vehicles are there.
I think that the commercial aspect of this negates the need for that, in that the numbers could reference anybody out there. If you've got a car sitting in your front yard without a license plate on it that doesn't have any wheels on it, then somebody could call that junk. But because we have a number of 10, it's okay. But this goes back to commercial. If you're opening a commercial facility that does these things, doesn't matter if you have 1 in stock or 20 in stock, at that point, you've decided to open a commercial business doing whatever this is we're trying to define.
Okay.
I think that
Now I'm starting to go to this idea of commercial as it defined, because some people might consider themselves not commercial when we are in fact thinking that they are commercial.
if they're selling parts off of cars, off of boats, off of tractors, off of lawnmowers,
Or storing.
or storing these items for the purpose to sell them, such as the salvage company behind the forklift company there. They're storing all these stuff to sell to the people that buy metal. They're storing this stuff till they get enough to make it worth their while to take it and go sell it. Those are commercial businesses. If John Doe
All right, okay,
has
I
5 cars on his property, he doesn't sell anything, he's out there piddling around with them. None of them run because he's piddling around with their his hobby. That's not a junkyard. That's his own property. And as long as he keeps it to where it's not a safety hazard or a dangerous to the community, then it's nobody's business what he does. But if he starts selling parts off of those cars to make money, that's a junkyard. I don't care if he's got 1 car or 50 cars.
So someone like you're describing, if they started selling parts off their cars, then they're commercial in your definition.
In my opinion, if they're selling parts off a car for a profit, it would be, in this definition, be a junkyard.
All right, I was just bringing that up because I want to make sure we're covered, because, my mind always goes to how someone's going to tear this apart and mean something other than what we wanted it to mean.
Well, I've got 5 cars sitting on my property, and my property is not a junkyard. I don't sell anything. Of course, you can't see my property either from the road.
Not that I really want to go down this road, but it does need to be brought up, is the reason why we're even going through this exercise is for safety, runoff of contaminants, viewscape, whatever it might be. There are several things. So what about the guy who just dumped 20 old cars in a ditch because he's trying to fill in a ditch on his property? A ditch that obviously is going to have drainage issues. But it's his private property, he's not selling it. He just needs something to go in the hole so he can level up his 20 acres. We're not addressing him at all, yet we're saying we're forming this ordinance because of these things. Have we really addressed those things, or have we not addressed those things? And again, it's private property, you got to fill in the hole. But I just want to make sure that we're going through an exercise for a reason. So, I like the definition though.
I'm kind of leaning towards, let's live with this definition till the next meeting, and let's just let it gel. And let's see if James can come up with something, and his staff come up with something that maybe sees some problems. Do you think it would be appropriate in this time for the next meeting to maybe run it by Root, Mr. Root? Just quickly, or do you think it's premature?
We could, I mean, if you guys aren't kind of married to it yet, I would say to hold off until you guys feel like you have something that you kind of all agree on and are ready to move forward with. And if you want to let everybody think about it for a meeting, I'd probably wait to make all those changes before we give it to him. Just
Go ahead, and I have a question.
I wanted to respond to your question. I'm trying to convince myself that this is a good exercise. So, in response to, is this a good exercise and why are we doing it? If we create this ordinance as it's written, if we create it the way I think it's going to be created, it's not going to have any teeth on anything that exists in Oconee County right now. It's only going to have teeth for a new entity coming in and a new commercial entity building a junkyard, which in the short term, that's probably okay with me. We've got something that defines what a junkyard is. We've got something that applies to new stuff as it develops, even though it doesn't apply to what exists now. And if we have that piece of infrastructure, if we have that piece of ordinance infrastructure in place, if we did, it would set the future up for an easier change in regulation if, for some reason, we became a more progressive county and wanted to go regulate or backfit existing junkyards. And I know that sounds terrible for the conservatives, it does to me, but I think that's the reason we're doing this. And plus, I think that Mr. Smith will tell you his, our comprehensive plan wants a junkyard ordinance to exist in this county. So that's my answer to your question.
We got a plan for the future.
Okay, there's something else we
You
ought
don't
to
need to
think
get in
about.
a hurry, but yes.
In the
Well,
Pickens,
only 50 years.
in the Pickens County ordinance, they define junk. It says, junk shall mean old or scrap copper, brass, rope, rags, batteries, paper, trash, rubber, debris, tires, waste junk, dismantled or wrecked motor vehicles or parts thereof, iron, steel, and other old or scrap ferrous or non-ferrous metal. The term junk shall include but not limited to abandoned barrels, drums, dismantled, inoperable industrial or commercial equipment, machinery being salvaged from parts, appliances, motors, industrial or commercial fixtures or parts thereof. That pretty much covers what junk is. There's something else. And that's in the Pickens County, definition of what junk is. It includes the rope that you were talking about. That's one of them that has rope in it.
That's so funny that rope is I don't see Pickens County. I don't see where that.
Very,
The,
maybe 3 or 4 pages from the very end of your packet.
Do you want to make that a separate section of the definition?
The third to last page on the back.
well, that would be, James was mentioning we should define certain elements of the definition, like the word, what junk is, what, maybe other junk, what is it here? Other junk. I mean, we're gonna have to define the word junk. That's just, I was just giving that out as an example of one of the definitions we could use, or define it a little bit.
Yeah.
Tweak it.
Why don't you go down a couple of spaces down and put that in there and see what, if we can live with that. Do we need a definition of junk, is that not correct?
Does everybody agree with that definition of the word junk?
Sure.
I don't know what it doesn't include. I got a lot of it in my closet.
There's kitchen sink written in there.
Not even going there. You got a big closet.
I do.
So James, okay, that's what you say, can you put that as maybe the second item? But let's go back to the definition of junkyard. Is everybody in agreement with that definition so far?
It's a starting point.
I mean, yeah, as a starting point as well.
Okay,
Sorry.
Go for it.
Go, Dave.
I would like for us to add to the definition does not include motor vehicles, impoundment lot or tow yard or sanitary landfills. I mean, I think there's other things that we don't want to include in the definition of junkyards. We don't want to include our
You want to
county
say what it is
landfill.
and then what it's not. Is that what
Right.
you're saying?
I know if you look in Anderson, it does have kind of a statement to that effect. It says, I just want to make sure that we're not only excluding motor vehicle impoundment lots and tow yards, but also other, landfills, county landfill, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I saw that. Was that in Anderson?
Sanitary landfill, yeah, it's on the top of,
County-operated or approved and permitted sanitary landfills.
yeah.
How's that?
I really think that we need to address this statement of storage of vehicles as being an inoperable status, because when you take this sentence and dissect it, it says a junkyard means any land used for storage of vehicles, boats, or machinery. Commercial storage of boats, vehicles, or machinery, which would, every auto dealership and boat dealership falls under that category.
We've said inoperable.
It's still it's not saying that in here.
Yeah, I never got any clarity on you guys, I think we kind of circled back around to other things, and that was kind of.
I would say put inoperable in there and start with that.
That helps. What does the state say? Oh, the state said it.
Can we let this gel until the next meeting?
That's what I was
Make
fixing to say. If it's okay with y'all, let's go ahead and,
Make a
Okay.
motion that we accept this temporarily.
make a motion, we accept this for the
As a
time,
starting point.
as a starting point on this ordinance. Ask staff to send us these two items that we just discussed, to where we'll have it in front of us at home or wherever. We can look it over, add, take away, or whatever we need to do. That's my motion.
I'll second
the
that.
motion, I'll third the motion.
All right, all those in favor? Okay. I need a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.